it's big board.
Sure.
Yeah, Victor Wembanyama, no surprise there at number 1. Scoot Henderson coming in at number 2, no surprise. Brandon Miller at 3. 4, Jarris Walker. 5, Cam Whitmore. Pretty solid 5 to round it out. Now, are those guys that if the Pistons were to draft at 1, they go Victor? 2, he's saying they'll go Scoot. 3, they go. That's what he's saying. That's interesting.
I think he's saying like he was ranking them in terms of like where you would have them ranked as a prediction.
Okay. Yeah.
So like I guess you could kind of say that like if they had the second pick, they're probably drafting Scoot, but they would have conversations about Brandon Miller, even with his performance in this tournament, which he's not doing himself any favors.
No,
he had a really bad tournament, but I still think he's going to be a really good NBA player. I mean, I saw some people comparing him to Jabari Smith already, and I'm just like, dude, you didn't even watch March Madness. Like, come on. But I think that list is more of kind of like a ranking of like how he would have these players ranked.
Yeah.
I think both of us agree Victor and Scoot Henderson are your number 1 and number 2 picks in the draft, regardless of where these teams are in the lottery. I think they're number 1 and number 2. I think Brandon Miller is the third best prospect. I mean, some argue it's Amin or Ausar Thompson. I still think Brandon Miller will probably go 3. 4 is where I think it's interesting. Jarris Walker at 4, and he didn't have either of the Thompson brothers in his ranking. And his reasoning for it was, the Pistons don't want to develop another guard. They don't want to develop more ball handlers. They want to have more wings on this team. I think Jarris Walker's interesting though.
So with that being said, why would they go Scoot over Brandon Miller then? If they don't want to keep – I mean, I know that Scoot Henderson is not a project compared to the Thompson twins. And I like it too. Here's another question too. Do you think this big board is based on how Troy Weaver would also rank these guys, that he values more day one players versus projects? Do you think that plays a factor? Because, I mean, it would make more sense to have like the Thompson twins ranked a little higher than when a draft big board, just because of the potential, right?
Yeah, I think this is more of it's kind of hard to answer this because I didn't make this big board. It's James Edwards' big board. We'd have to ask him and have him on again for a third time. Like to your point though, like the reason why they would have Scoot number 2 is because he's still the second best player in this draft. Whether Pistons fans think Brandon Miller is the second best player in the draft, Scoot Henderson is the second best player in this draft. He shows flashes, and you see the comparables of a Derrick Rose, of a Russell Westbrook, those explosive point guards that you see in every draft. I think Scoot, to me, would be a starter day one. He could contribute right away. That's why I think James had him number 2, because he's the second best player in the draft. Even though there's conversations of Brandon Miller, there was like a couple of weeks ago of him being the second best prospect in this draft. It's just talk. It's just smoke. I think, a lot of people don't get to watch G League games. They didn't watch a lot of his games this season. And, the G League Ignite, they didn't make the playoffs. They were kind of one of the worst teams in the G League. But that has nothing to do with Scoot Henderson. It has to do with the team around him. It just wasn't a really good team, if I'm being honest. But I think the reason why they wouldn't have the Thompson brothers in is kind of like, to James's point in his article, is they don't really want to develop another guard like Amin Thompson, just because Amin Thompson has a lot of potential, but he's not as polished as a Scoot Henderson, where Scoot can contribute like Jaden Ivey's doing right now, right away.
Yeah.
Amin is a guy that has two-way potential, but his three-point shot isn't there. Neither is Asaur's. Asaur's a better three-point shooter, but it's really not there. I think that's why James didn't have either Amin or Asaur in his rankings. He had Jarris Walker from Houston and Cam Whitmore from Villanova. And I know, you were talking. I said I would just bank on Cam Whitmore because I know Villanova produces really good NBA prospects.